Okay, so let's have a look at the ingredients we're going to use for the stuffing of the samosas. First, we'll start with all of the spices. We've got 1 heaped teaspoonful of garam masala, 1/2 teaspoonful of mild chili powder. We've got 1 level teaspoonful of turmeric and 1/3 teaspoonful of cumin powder. I'm using 2 tennis ball size red onions, 4 large garlic cloves and the equal amount of ginger, 2 green and 1 red bullet chilies, 500 grams of turkey mince, a bunch of coriander, 2 baking potatoes and 1 tin of peas, 290 grams. I always put the ginger, garlic and chilies in the same blender to make the garlic, ginger and chili paste. Once it's blended, will look something like this. The potatoes, I always finely chop them and boil them for about 15 minutes. Whilst the potatoes are cooking, put some oil in the pan and throw in the onions and start cooking the onions until they start to brown. I always tend to find as well when I'm cooking with the onions, I always add just a little sprinkle of salt over the top. This will help to reduce the onions down that little bit quicker and bring the moisture and flavour out of the onion. Always keep the pan on a nice high heat for this part. As you can see, the flame is on full underneath, just to help the speeding of the cooking. Once the onions have been cooked for about 2 to 3 minutes, start adding in the onion and garlic and chili. This is when you start getting the flavours building up and creating a nice flavour for the samosas. Don't worry if it doesn't empty completely, because what we will do is add a little bit of water to this in a minute so that we can not burn the spices when they get added in. So we give this a little bit of a stir together. And we add a little bit of water in the jug. Keep the onions, garlic and ginger paste on the move for about 2 to 3 minutes until it just starts to soften down. Various ways to do this. You can use a spoon, or as you can see like I do, if you're a dab hand with the wok, just give it a flick around just to soften them down nicely. You can really smell the flavours now coming out of the chilli, garlic and ginger. Starting to soften down quite nicely. And then you add all of the spices in one go and give those a bit of a stir in with the rest. This is when the flavours really start coming together now. And this is where the water comes in useful, so you're not wasting that last piece of ginger and garlic paste. You can see it tends to be a little bit solid, a bit like a thick gravy. What you don't want to do at this point is burn the spices. So this is where the last remnants, I've added some water in with the last of the garlic and ginger paste. Just tip this in and give this a bit of a stir. Now you can really smell the flavour of the samosa flavour coming together. Leave that to simmer for a few minutes to get all the flavours to come together. And you can see now, as it's just starting to dry, take the turkey mince and put the whole lot in one go. Various ways to break this down. Mince, I like it broken down, and the reason we do this after we've got the flavours going together is so that all these flavours will then penetrate into the turkey, adding a more enhanced taste. And as you can see, the breaking down of the mince is quite slow this way. So a little trick that I always use, I use a potato masher, and I just blend this around in the wok until it all breaks down nice and easy, and it separates the mince, and at the same time it blends it into the onion, garlic and chilli paste with all of the spices together. As you can see, as I'm manoeuvring it round and round, the turkey is also cooking. Flame is still set on a nice high heat. As you can see, starting to separate the mince now, making it easier and easier to work with. I tend to find this is by far the quickest way. You can just use the wooden spoon and keep breaking it down and breaking it down, but you can see in real time it doesn't really take that long to do this amount of cooking with the mince. And we don't want to waste any. So just take the last few bits off. And then we can go back with the spoon. Whilst that's been having a little cook, I've been quickly chopping up some coriander. As you can see, this is all quite loose now and starting to get some really good flavours coming together. The smell of it is absolutely delightful. Now we add the coriander, which has just been freshly chopped. As you can see, I like coriander in mine, some people don't. It's not something that you have to go mad with. Some people use coriander powder. I tend to find that the leaf coriander, for me, is better because it just gives you a much better flavour. Always like to give it a stir first and then wiggle mine together. Nice and quick. Leave this cooking with the coriander for just a couple of minutes. As you can see, keeping things on the move all of the time. And the samosa base is almost there for the stuffing. Looking nice and dry on the bottom, which is just about how we want this to be. Now the coriander's been done, we add in the peas. And the potatoes are now ready, so we'll quickly strain these. And add the potatoes on the top. Don't worry if you do lose a pea or two, you can always clean up afterwards. I tend to just try and get this to come together nice and quick. You don't want to move the potato around too much in case it squashes it. Some people do it with mashed potato. I personally prefer mine with cubed potato. And as you can see, samosa base is almost ready, and I like to give mine a little shake just to make sure it's all mixed in thoroughly. So all the flavours are completely infused together. Potato, meat, all the spices. And that is the samosa base, just about ready. And then what I do is take it off the heat, put it somewhere to cool down slightly before making the samosa wraps. Red skin samosas, I tend to use a packet of beetroot, put into a saucepan, add 1 pint of water and just boil them for about 20 minutes to get the colour into the water. Green coloured samosas, I tend to use a packet of spinach and again 1 pint of water and boil this for about 20 minutes. Once the spinach has been cooked, I tend to put it into a blender first, blend it up, strain it through an ordinary strainer. Then to get it finer, I tend to put it into a coffee plunger to make it really small, and you end up with juice that looks a bit like this. Wait for it to cool down and it should be okay. The beetroot juice is just strained normal and put into a glass, and there is more than enough fluid for both coloured pastries. So how to make the samosas wraps. I'm just using Tesco's plain flour and a standard spoon. All I do is 2 spoonfuls of flour, straight out the pack and straight into the bowl. Add just a splash of olive oil, not too much, and if you have it to hand as well, a small pinch of salt over the top. give this a small wiggle and bind it slightly together, and then beetroot for your red colouring from the one we did earlier on. Some people know exactly how to measure it. I always say just keep adding it until you know it's getting to a sticky consistency. Bearing in mind you can always add more flour if it's too wet. That looks like that should be just about enough now. Keep rolling around, and as you can see, nice pink colour starting to form for these samosa skins. A little bit too sticky, so I just put my hand in the flour and just add a little bit more. I always find this is the easiest way of doing these. And then once it's all been done round and round in the bowl, as you can see, the bowl eventually removes all the waste on the sides. Then you know the consistency's about correct. Move the bowl to one side and place on the side. As you can see, flour. All we're going to do is a little bit of kneading. Put into the flour and give it a bit of a squash. Doesn't matter if you get it all over your fingers. Little tricks to this, you can see very sticky still. More flour, roll around on the side, and all we're doing is basically kneading the dough. Still a bit too damp. Add some more flour until it feels like it's right. Like I say, some people know exactly how to measure it, and the bits where your fingers get too sticky, this is the good bit. We've got floury fingers. We can just rub them together now, and all the bits that come off as we're kneading this together, we can just put them all back together again, and the fingers are almost clean. All the bits and pieces, look, no waste. And then all we're going to do is just keep kneading this for about 3 to 4 minutes, just to get it a little bit tight. Various ways of doing the dough. Some people do sausage rolls, blend them out, bend them in. Other people keep doing it the other way and tucking it in from the top all the time. Depends on what you find is the best method to do yours. As long as it feels like it's getting a little bit elasticated is all you're after. Again, still just slightly too tight, or a little bit too sticky, a little bit more flour, because what we don't want it to do is to stick too much to the side. So as you can see, just that little bit more flour, and just keep rolling round and round until we get a nice, even, rubbery kind of texture. And once this has been kneaded for a few minutes, you can see it starts to get nice and tight. You can always tell because it gets smooth on the top. Once you have that, create in a ball and set to one side. Green samosa wraps exactly the same. 1 spoon, some Tesco's plain flour. You can use strong flour if you like to. Just 2 spoonfuls of flour should be enough to make the base that we need. Add again just a splash of olive oil. You don't need too much. Once this is mixed in, little splash of salt, and then the green liquid. This is the one we made from the spinach earlier on. It's been blended as well. Usually about half a cup should be sufficient for this. And as you can see already, the green colouring is affecting the flour. And exactly the same as when we made the red ones, just keep kneading this until it all binds up into one nice tight dough ball. As you can see, various colours. Beetroot juice for the red one, spinach juice blended and strained to make the green one. You can see just a little bit too dry at the moment, a little bit more liquid. then it should start coming together nicely. Nice and dry around the outsides, so we can tip everything on the side, and this is ready for kneading. So let's start pushing this together. All the loose pieces will eventually wrap in to the dough. All the bits on the fingers, same as we did last time. Little rub of the fingers, all the big stuff comes off. Pull it all together, and as we're kneading and pulling things together, a little bit of stretching and pulling, and you'll feel it gets a little bit more tacky and sticky the more you knead it. As you can see now, all of the loose pieces, all parts of the same dough ball. And the same as we did with the beetroot colour one, just play with this for anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes until it feels nice and elasticy. Again, some people like the rolling out method and putting back together. Some people like to pull and twist. Or you can do like I do and just keep pushing down. By far, for me, the easiest method. And this is done again for anywhere between 3 to 5 minutes. And once it's done again at the end, nice little round ball, still stretching a little bit, if you can see, not quite elastic enough. If it's breaking, it's not kneaded enough. So we keep playing until it gets to the right stretchiness, and then we can leave it to sit to one side. And there's our 2 coloured pastries for the samosa wraps. Pick up all the pieces. Don't believe in wasting. That's starting to get nice and tight and rubbery now. And turn it into a nice little ball. And again, set to one side, and we'll come back in a minute. Okay, time to make the samosa wraps shapes. Sprinkle some flour on the side. Pick up the pink dough we made earlier. Make into a nice long sausage. This will probably make 3 to 4 balls. I'll find my cutter. There's 1 ball. There's 2 balls, and there's 3 balls. So we start with the first one, and all we're going to do is get it almost flat before we start the rolling. Make sure it's all floured up. Everyone has their own techniques. I don't do thin phyllo pastry. What they tend to do is stack these together, put oil over the top, put another one over the top, and when you get a stack of 4 or 5, then end up rolling them down to make it really thin. The technique I tend to use, you can see I keep moving over to keep the flour underneath it, is just keep stretching the pastry more and more. As you can see, starting to get sticky already underneath, so we need a little bit more flour. Some one side, some on the other side, because it has to keep moving and stretching all of the time. If it can't stretch, you won't get the result that you need. And all I do is roll this out until it gets almost to the point you can see it's elasticizing now, trying to stretch back. Is it still moving? It's still moving underneath, so there's still plenty of flour underneath. And some people always say, but yeah, the shape's not correct. Well, the shape is quite an easy one. What I tend to use is a big lid. I use this from my wok. Place this over the top and then just cut the circle. And all of this waste pastry is just set to one side, and then you can go again. And then what I do for the shape of these is get a pizza cutter and just roll them. You can use a knife. I tend to find that a pizza cutter is a lot easier. And as you can see, 4 pieces, and then all we do is take one of these and put it into a hot pan just to solidify. I'll show you that piece in a minute. Okay, so the pan is getting nice and warm now. You can see I've kept it on quite a medium heat. So the pan itself, if you was to touch it, would be quite hot. Just going to go and get the shape wrap from the earlier video. Take it from the blade. All we're going to do is put it quickly into the pan. Quick shake round. Quickly flick it over. Just to solidify and tip straight out. It's literally that simple, and all this does, as you can see, slight misshape there, slightly solidifies the flour, so then you can carry on using the rest of them. I'll get another one and show you again. Take another one from the side and straight into the pan. Because the pan's quite hot underneath, we don't want to burn the flour too much. All we want to do, you can see it's nicely moving around. We can tip this one straight out. And this is where they will set slightly harder rather than working with really soft pastry. One more. Straight into the pan. Because the plate itself is quite hot underneath, you'll see that'll move straight away, so we can tip that one straight out. And so we carry on doing this process until we have all of these shapes semi-solidified. Now we've got all the samosa wraps cut and semi-set, I'll show you how to stuff them and wrap them. Right then, time to show you how to fill the samosas. You will need a glass of water and a brush. As you can see, we've got the filling and all of the samosa sheets. So to fold them, I always put the triangle away, fold it so it's almost in a triangle this side, get the brush, dampen the other side, because we're going to stick this side to the other one by pinning the bottom and just gently squashing. Then you can see we have a really nice kite shape, and because they're semi-set, they're easier to work with. All you do then is open up the samosa sheet, pinch inside. Now we've got a nice little funnel where we can add the stuffing. A little bit of potato, a little bit of meat. Once you think we have enough, make sure it's all nicely pushed inside. Fold over the top piece so we still have a nice kite. Wet both sides with the brush. Some people fold this way. I like to just roll mine, tucking it in underneath, and a little squash, and there is a perfect samosa shape. Nice and green, all sealed in. You can, if you want, pinch the edges to make sure they're all nice and tidy, and then sit to one side. There's one green one. Let's go for a pink one, see if this does the same. Fold almost into the middle. This is lining up with the top point. Don't fold too hard in case it creases that side. Slight dampening of this side because that's going to stick it to it. Fold the point so it touches and roll all the way up. You can see it's not fully covering, it's just enough to seal the edge, because you can make them fatter, and just seal the edge down with a little gentle squash. Pinch on the inside, and again there's the funnel. Add some more samosa mix. Nicely done. Push it all inside, make sure there's enough. Slightly bend the top, and then again moisten the top and the sides to help it stick. Pin the sides down and roll it in place. As you can see, this one if this happens and you do get some splits, it doesn't matter. Just pinch them slightly together, because when they fry, they will set okay. Look, this one's obviously set a little bit too hard, and there you can see though another samosa sheet. But again, just squash together if it gets too bad. And once it's fried, another good samosa. Let's do one more. Again, looking for roughly the middle. Fold to there. Wet the other side. Just enough to make it sticky. Make the funnel shape. Open up again. Pinch to make sure it's sealed. There's the funnel. More samosa mix. And about 3 teaspoons each one really. Push it in to make sure it's all nicely set. Fold down. Moisten the top edge to help it stick again. And then just tuck in as we roll. And a little gentle squash, and there you can see not quite sealed on the edge there, so we just pinch. The pastry's soft enough to do this, and there's some more. We'll carry on until we're done. Now that all the samosas have been wrapped, all we've got to do now is cook them in oil. Normally cook for about 3 minutes. Like to just check them occasionally just to see if they're doing okay. Going nice and brown, look. Better to cook them slightly slowly. Going a bit quick, look, the oil's a little bit too hot. But just means they're going to cook quicker, and once they're done, you just take them out and rest them on some tissue. It's that simple. As you can see, now all of the samosas are fried off, stacked nicely on tissue paper and ready for eating.